Okay, Marigots, we're live.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to Perth East and our council meeting this Tuesday, October the 19th. I'd like to call our meeting to order. If everyone could please bow their heads, we'll have a moment of reflection. Okay, thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. Before we confirm the agenda, we're going to move some things around tonight. So after each delegation, we're going to move our motions to behind each delegation instead of at the end under new business. And we're also going to move item 8.5.1, process for the expansion of the Shakespeare drinking water system. And we're going to put that after under 6.3. So is there anything else anyone wishes to add to the agenda? If not, we need a motion to receive the agenda as amended. Moved by Daryl, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, if you have pecuniary interest, you can disclose that now, whereas as our meeting goes along. We do have 17 items under the consent agenda. Is there any item anyone would like pulled or have questions of any of the items? Hugh?
5.17. Did they give any reason why they want the lots to be bigger? Was there any more correspondence than what was in our report? Because we seem to be always pushing for smaller lots and higher density. So I just wondered if there was any reason that they were going to bigger lots.
So through your,
Go ahead, sorry.
Through your worship, we never received any other correspondence other than the notice of meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do you want to pull it then, Hugh, or do you want to just leave it in there?
You can just leave it in there. It's fine.
Okay, thank you. And Jerry? Jerry, you?
I was going to declare my conflict.
Oh, sorry.
Which is 8.5.2. I'm an employee of Mornington Communications. Just to get that on there for now. Thanks.
Okay. Is there anything else anyone would like to pull then in the consent agenda? If not, then we would receive all the items under 5.1.1 to 5.1.17 set out in the consent agenda for October 19, 2021 regular meeting of council be received for information, and the minutes of October 5, 2021 regular council meeting be adopted. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Jerry, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we do have 3 delegations tonight, and the first delegation we have is Andrew Mirabella from Hempson Consulting, and this has to do with our development charges, our background study and draft development charge bylaw. So Andrew, welcome to our meeting, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Thanks again for having me. My name is Andrew Mirabella. I've been in front of you the last few meetings to discuss the DC bylaw. I have any particular presentation per se. It was more just I was invited back as a follow-up from the last conversation in which we were directed to go back and update the bylaw with a couple of the directions that we received at the last meeting, one being to include an accessory definition into the bylaw, 2 being the direction to move to a municipal-wide approach for the calculation purposes of collecting development charges, and 3 to update and review kind of some farming definitions, in which we've provided that to staff and updated the bylaw in respect to the bona fide farm definitions of what we see in other communities, and explicitly isolating that the exemptions on farm buildings be only for purposes related to that farming operation and not related to industrial operations on farm that relate to other farming or providing a service to other operations outside of that particular location. So the definition itself and the exemption would apply to bona fide farming operations and only to the land in which the farming operation is applicable to. So those are the kind of the three items in which we were referred back to, and we've went through the bylaw and kind of fine-tuned it based on some of the legal review. And I'm here to answer any additional questions if there happens to be any.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions? Hugh?
At our last meeting, it was if we went just with an area rate instead of a countywide rate. In Shakespeare, the asset management rate or something would have to go up. And I didn't think about that until today, so I couldn't send that question in. I just wondered why that would change if you had an area rate or if you went with a across township rate.
So through the mayor, I'm not sure I quite follow the question. The development charge that we're calculating here, if it was area specific or municipal wide, doesn't particularly have an impact on the asset management component. The asset management looks at the repair and replacement of the existing assets, and the assets, once they come online and become the responsibility of the municipality, the DCs are funding first round capital. So it is a different bucket of funds for different purposes. And whether it's an area wide rate or area specific rate, you're still collecting the same amount of money for the first round capital. They are revenue neutral options. But there is a difference in rate between an area specific and a municipal wide, as the costs are funded by different parties, right?
That's okay.
Okay. Are there any more questions? If no, oh, Daryl?
No, I had mentioned last time there, I did have my concerns of I get what we're doing with this development charges and, the people who have the utilities and when the subdivision goes and such that we ain't charged enough, and it's a hard time catching it. It's just on farm, I struggle. I would need to pay for development fees, even if it is, say, a flame cutter or a machine shop doing parts for automotive or farm equipment, whatever it may be, just because it's not connected to that secondary income. If they want natural gas, chances are they got to pay for the shop to get it to their laneway. There's lots to do this, so I still struggle. They would need to have fees. I know those Township, I don't believe they charge anything. That report said. It's just my concerns. I know there's mixed thoughts on that. I just wanted to put that out there. Maybe the consultant can help us a little bit why they feel we should pay. I'm just my thoughts. And go catch it anyway.
All right, I'm having a hard time hearing you, Counselor. I don't know if everyone else is experiencing it, but it was really fuzzy on my end. I caught some of it, but not the entirety of it.
Oh, really? Okay. No, I was just concerned. I'll speak a little clearer. Just concerned. Like, say somebody had a machine shop on farm, and of course they may be making parts for automotive or whatever it may be, and they go to develop this and build it. They may have to get zoning changes already. They may have to get a variance. MPAC is going to evaluate. But at the end of the day, the utilities we're trying and development fees we're catching in the cities, they're never going to benefit them. Never. They all have to pay for everything that comes there and look after themselves. So I would just like to see it totally exempt from farm at all. I don't know. Council may have other thoughts as well. That's my thoughts. Thanks.
So just to be clear, the bylaw as it stands now, any farm operation is exempt It's only, we're trying to make an not exempt, I guess. They would pay if they are operating or constructing something that benefits or provides a service or a commercial or industrial operation that would be outside of their farming activity. But if they are doing anything on their property that is farm related, specifically for that property and that assessment, then they would be exempt from the payment of DCs. It's just trying to limit it so that if the industrial operation down the street that's not a farm is effectively doing the same thing as what that operation is doing and selling or doing something that's outside of benefiting their particular property, they would be kind of charged in the same manner, and not trying to isolate who would get the fee or not. But to be it's going to still be a bit of a gray area in the bylaw, and it's going to be tough to, I've raised a concern on tough to kind of spot check that and obviously ensure the continuity in there with, what at the time of building permit. But it's going to be something you'll have to monitor, and if there's ways that in the next DC study in the next bylaw to make improvements to it, you'll have to do that. But it's going to be a bit of a trial and error just with every DC, and this is your first one, so there's going to be some of that that'll have to go through it. So just be cognizant of that.
Okay, fair enough. Cheers.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, we do have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the presentation from Andrew Mirabella, consultant, Hempson Consulting Limited, development charges background study and draft development charges bylaw, follow up from October 5, 2021 council meeting for information. And do we need to say that the bylaw is coming back at the next meeting, or it will automatic? Teresa's nodding her head yes. So and that council will adopt the bylaw at November 2nd meeting. Is that correct? Okay. So we need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Hugh. Second by Daryl. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Andrew. It's been great seeing you. Thank you for all your help, and yeah, we'll move forward, and we look forward to where this is all going to take us. So,
thanks very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, so the next delegation we have is Amira Kartik, and she is our climate change coordinator, and she's got a presentation for us. And Amira, the floor is yours. Welcome to Perth East.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Let's try and share my screen here. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amara Kartik. I am the Climate Change Coordinator, and tonight I'm going to be presenting the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reduction Plan for the Township of Perth East. To start, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability established the Partners for Climate Protection, PCP program, which was signed by Perth East in 2019. The aim of the program is so that the PCP members commit to adopting a community greenhouse gas reduction target in line with the Government of Canada's target, and to adopt a target that is either similar or more ambitious. The PCP program is based on a 5-milestone framework that involves completing a greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, setting a greenhouse gas reduction target, developing a local action plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring and reporting progress and results. Through the PCP platform, Perth East communities' emissions were compiled and uploaded into the tool, which then assisted in calculating the total emissions from each sector. So this graph shows the total community emissions of Perth County, including the city of Stratford and the township of St. Mary's. All emissions was calculated off of the baseline year of 2017. The greatest contributor to local emissions is a combination of all transportation. This includes on-road transportation, such as personal vehicles, and off-road vehicles, such as tractors and other agriculture-related vehicles. This makes up approximately 54% of the total emissions. The second largest contributor in the area is the building sectors, and this makes up approximately 38% of the total emissions. Majority of these emissions come from a source of natural gas, propane, and fuel. And finally, the third contributor of emissions is from solid waste. Looking specifically at the breakdown for Perth East, and similar to the graph before, the greatest contributor is from the transportation sector, accounting for 81% of emissions, followed by a combination of the building sectors at 16%. Sorry, that's residential buildings at 16%, and 3% from solid waste. In 2017, Perth East emitted approximately 370 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent from on-road transportation, off-road transportation, and agriculture waste and building sectors. This amount of emissions is equivalent to approximately 80,000 cars driven for 1 year. With this total of emissions, the emissions per person in 2017 was equal to approximately 30.31 tons of CO2 equivalent, which is comparable to nearly 7 passenger vehicles driven per year per person. So with this growth rate and the emissions from 2017, the increase of emissions, if this scenario was to continue as is, would reach levels up to nearing 411,000 tons of CO2 per year, which is equivalent to about 8,000 to 7,000 vehicles driven for 1 year. So the next few slides will show the projected emissions under 3 different scenarios and controls, focusing on the red line, which establishes if the rate of emissions continues as is normal today. Then, for example, the projected average yearly temperature would be around 15 degrees Celsius. And what that means is that with a higher heat temperatures, there could be significant health effects on our community. This graph shows the projected average yearly ice days, and this indicates the length and severity of winter time. So a decrease in frost days means that, yes, the growing season in the area will increase, but it also means that there is likely going to be an increase in pests and the potential for increased vector-borne diseases. Less frost days also means that there is a limit in the type of plants and animals that can survive in this new environment, which means the normal species that we see today may not be able to survive in the future, and this would affect our ecosystems and decrease our biodiversity. These 2 graphs show the projection for cooling degrees days and days with a maximum temperature at 30 degrees. So this indicates the amount of air conditioning needed to maintain a comfortable temperature in warmer months. An increase in cooling degree days is indicative of a longer and more intense summer, and this is an important indicator for health and environmental risk. Temperatures above 30 degrees can increase the risk of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. So the approach to the climate adaptation plan, the plan identifies various actions and strategies to move forward on increasing our adaptability and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions within the community. The approach of the greenhouse gas reduction plan is to ensure that there are both short and long-range planning in programs and initiatives to constantly build and ensure climate change is included in our future plans, which leads to the next point of mainstreaming climate into our practices, plans, and decisions. And to ensure a smooth transition, it is an inclusive plan that covers the likes of key stakeholders, individuals, and the community. So the plan is broken down into actions, targets, and goals, and it covers these 7 sectors. So to briefly go over the actions for each sector, starting with government, The municipalities and county governments are capable of effectively engaging the local community on climate change, local action, and resiliency projects. The local government can properly engage the community so that they're able to make real change and be part of the decision-making within our community. By adopting a climate lens tool, such as the one provided by the Clean Air Partnership, it helps to analyze the relationship between a municipality's decision and climate change by projecting probability and the outcome, whether climate actions are included in that decision or not. The second sector is the building and land use sector. So by having a green building standard not only helps to boost the local economy, but also addresses the priorities that have been set through the development of this plan. And this includes air quality, energy efficiency, water quality, and solid waste. Through the business and industry sector, it's important that we start, join, and/or support our local green business hub. And it is done by implementing sustainable actions into our businesses. It not only helps to improve businesses, but it improves our efficiency and reduces our costs overall. In the transportation sector, as I demonstrated in the graphs before, transportation is one of the largest contributors to our local greenhouse gas emissions. There is an opportunity to push the reduction of this sector of emissions through supportive actions and policy implementation. This can be done by providing better connectivity and promoting active transportation, implementing a transportation master plan. Through the waste sector, the ultimate ideal solution is to move towards a zero waste community and support a transition to a circular economy. So by target and plan for waste-related changes and projects into the coming years in each municipality's decisions, this plan helps to set targets for waste diversion and waste reduction, which are both crucial in reducing the waste that goes into our landfill. In the natural environment, there are many projects that could be implemented across the region to increase naturalization and sequestration opportunities. Planting and renaturalization have many co-benefits and these projects can often be assisted by local schools to encourage a deeper connection to the environment and allow an opportunity to teach about our biodiversity and land use. The naturalization of spaces is important as it allows for the natural and native biodiversity and ecosystems within our community to return and thrive. And finally, looking at the agriculture sector, it is to ensure that the farming community has access to funding and resources to implement resiliency projects that reduce runoff and in turn improve our local water quality. So to quickly go over the goal for each sector, in the government sector, to embed climate considerations into all municipalities and provide educational resources. Building and land use to create greener, more sustainable, accessible, and energy efficient neighborhoods. Business and industry to support sustainability and climate actions in local businesses. Transportation to support and plan for future transportation changes, needs, and priorities. Waste sector to reduce waste going to landfill to become a zero waste community. The natural environment sector to preserve and improve our natural ecosystems and assets. And finally, the agriculture sector to support local agriculture resiliency and mitigation projects. So through the implementation strategy, this plan is intended to be a support for the community to lead in climate action and is led by the municipalities. This implementation strategy will allow municipalities and the county to be leaders in climate action while also allowing for shared responsibility of implementation. This can also be achieved through partnerships, through external organizations to ensure the smooth transition in the implementation stage and also to act as external resources. By being able to budget and plan for climate actions, which would be more accessible through the adoption of a climate lens. And it is important to remember that there are different avenues for government funding for green projects that are constantly being renewed and updated. So the overall takeaway message is that through the adoption of this plan, it will showcase how communities are all connected and working together to create a healthier and more prosperous future. Thank you. And I will now be open for questions.
Okay, thanks, Amara. Amanda?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I just have a few comments and a couple questions. So again, just want to preface this. So for those listening, this was a contract, a 2-year contract that to have this position hired to create this report. This is the first time that we're seeing a report in 2 years. And Amira, I know that this is, for context, you just sort of come into this role part way. And I was hoping, so my first question was, I'm hoping you can provide some more insight for council. I know that this position was based out of North Perth. In terms of the work plan and perhaps the person that you were reporting to, who was giving you some guidance in terms of the creation of the report, just trying to get some, to help us understand in terms of the process, because once again, no fault to you, but this is the first time that council has seen any sort of report or update in 2 years. So I was hoping you could give us, walk us through that. And then I just have a couple other questions afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor. So I have stepped into this role in June of this year, and the draft plan was already created at that time. I know when the previous coordinator left, she was in the hopes of, towards the end of her contract, of presenting the plan to the various municipalities. Her contract prior to that was creating this draft plan. From when I stepped into this role, I reviewed the plan. I did pass it on to the PCP members to get their input on the plan as is, and I felt that it was a good reviewed plan and that it should be moved towards council. I cannot account for any communications prior to me stepping into this role with council as it pertains to information on the plan.
Great, that's great, and certainly maybe Teresa can jump in here, provide some more context, and then I have some other questions.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, and we really appreciate Amira's done an amazing job in terms of putting this plan together. Considering it's taking into, there's 7 municipalities involved in coming in midway, she's put it all together. And just as a reminder to council regarding the representation for each municipality, we had back a few months ago, 1 member of council appointed, so Councillor Hurlick, and also a lead in terms of staffing, and that's our operations coordinator, Jake Collings, and working in coordination with Wes Kipper as well, Public Works and Parks Manager. So in terms of locally, there is that opportunity, and as Amira spoke to the broad plan and trying to coordinate that all together. And as we go through this in terms of meetings and in terms of input, then that's going to be coming back to and asking, because having a counselor's perspective, counselor's input regarding it, and at a staff level. So that in terms of, for Amira, in terms of that from each municipality involved as well.
Mary Agats, may I ask an additional question?
Yes, please continue.
Great, thanks for that context, Teresa. So what I was getting at is what I was trying to maybe hoping to understand, and what I was referencing work plan and who was reporting to who is perhaps my understanding of what was the intention of this report and what was presented to us is it's missing, in the sense that I sort of understood that perhaps the report is, look, appreciate the tremendous amount of work that's been put in the report, but I think it misses the mark. So for starters, I think, the lens that was put on this report is very urban focused. Certainly there's references to the ag community, but as somebody who's been involved in the ag community my entire life, recognizing that agriculture in fact sequesters carbon. And so I think there's some concerns there. I'm concerned regarding the fact that, and this is not to you, Amira, this is, predates your time here, but my understanding was there were supposed to be consultations with various groups in the community, including agriculture, and that data or those interviews was not summarized or represented in this report. I also, the lens of the report was very focused on sort of, references to United Nations and things like that. And while those are certainly noteworthy, it does not reflect a rural municipality. So it would have been great if some case studies and things of that nature from a rural lens was included. And so that, once again, that's why I was asking who was your supervisor who was helping guide you to put this report together, because I think it sort of misses the mark. And also would have been great to highlight, the various municipalities, the work that has been done to date with regards to climate change and some of the other items that you noted. So it would have been great to have a snapshot of here's where we are currently and here's where we could go and opportunities. And so that was not captured, and it would have been great to have that lens. So it's concerning to me that was not captured, and it's I cannot support this report at all. Just given, again, recognizing I appreciate the work that's gone in, but it completely misses the mark to what was asked. Also recognizing this was a grant, which means that the intent was for it to be temporary. And there's references to making this, 3 full-time positions. And that is also very concerning. Should have been the intent. And that should never have even been referenced in the report. So anyways, just some comments and some thoughts, and once again, recognize the work that's been put into it, but just a little bit concerned in terms of what's been included in sort of the process that's, where we're at today.
Okay, Amara, do you want to respond at all, or do you want to hear the rest of council's questions?
Just to briefly respond to that comment, I understand that to date there has been a lot of projects that have gone on since this has been signed, and that is the beauty of the implementation stage. So moving forward, there will have to be a complete survey done of all the projects and being able to see the climate change aspect of it, to be able to add that to our reduction emission target. I understand that the plan is very general, and it was done in such a way that there is that adaptability to each municipality, because with respect to the vast amount of work that would have to be done to be able to pull all of those projects from 7 different municipalities and include them in this project and this plan, it would be a humongous report to present to you. And I understand where your concern is coming from, and I absolutely agree that each municipality has their own focus, and there is work to be done. And during the implementation stage, there will be inventories that have to be done. I understand carbon sequestration is one of the big things that has come up through every town council that I've presented to so far. And so there is room for improvement, and there are plans to do inventory of projects that have been done.
Okay, anyone else with questions? Amanda?
I just have one more, and perhaps it's something I've missed in the report. but just going back to the original motion. So it says the main task, or this is the background, the main task of the climate change coordinator is to develop community-wide greenhouse gas emissions plans for each partnering municipality. In addition, the climate change coordinator is also responsible to update each municipality's conservation and demand management plan. I don't see something that's referenced to Perth East specifically. I also don't see the other reference. So I'm just wondering, is this something that I've missed, or is that a piece of the report that's coming?
Just to clarify, are you asking about an emissions profile or?
So I'm looking, and again, Amir, this is putting you on the spot, and it's maybe a little bit unfair. I think this is really directed to who your supervisor is at North Perth. This is the original motion in context for moving forward with this position and agreeing with to bring someone for this role. And so, and I can certainly get staff to send this to you. So what I'm referencing is it dates back to May 21st of 2019. And it's the recommendation that was brought forward to council, and it provides the background for the intent for this position. And so this is why I was asking regarding the work plan, who was mentoring you, who was your supervisor, to provide some guidance, because this is why I think there's some concerns from council, or at least from my perspective. There seemed to be some misalignment to what we thought was happening and what the report we received. So I'll just reference it again. So the main task of the climate change coordinator is to develop community-wide greenhouse emission plans for each partnering municipality. In addition, the climate change coordinator is also responsible to update each municipality's conservation and demand management plan. So I just, again, I apologize. Perhaps it's something that I've missed, or maybe this is a portion of the report that wasn't included in what was sent to council, but this is why I'm a little bit concerned and troubled why that wasn't included. I didn't see that referenced in the report. And to your point, it was very general, but that's not what the intent and what council had agreed upon. So I just, again, not to put you on the spot, but this is really questions regarding who was your supervisor at North Perth and who was helping guide you to ensure that the work was reflected to what the intent was for what council is supposed to be receiving. So perhaps I may have missed it in the report. So please, if that's the case, I'm happy to get more information on that.
Okay, anyone else with questions? Daryl?
Yeah, sorry there, my internet messed off on here. That's the first one that happened right now. No, I apologize. You know what? I did receive one email about just what I thought of a couple things, and I apologize. I missed it for about 3 weeks, and I never got any phone calls or anything, and I apologize. And then here we are. That was the outreach I received, and I apologize. I do have a couple concerns here with climate change in general. I'll just make it blunt. We have 475,000 acres of farmland in Perth County. If it was all to be grown in crop and corn, it would absorb 14 billion pounds of carbon dioxide a year. 14 billion pounds, 36,000 pounds an acre it absorbs. The fact that in the tune of 11 to 15 million acres of bush burns a year for the last since recorded history in North America is essential. I learned that stuff in school, and now it's just so wild. It's a little blanketing some of this. I see stuff like enforce idling bylaws and that work. There's so much of that is overlapping from the province. It's concerning, and that's where I'm at. Again, up in North Perth, I know they were spearheading this, and I thought they were kind of overseeing and shadowing. So I'm kind of lost for words at this point. Thank you.
Okay, Teresa?
Okay, all right, thank you. So just going back into regarding the position, our new climate change coordinator, Amara, has come in through, midway through the process. This was it is shared, even though Amara is, her home work area is in North Perth. This is a shared, basically a shared position. And we are, I know that it was a big project to get to this point for Amara to put all this information together. And we have had discussion regarding it. I know that council members have indicated we've got, there's accomplishments and in terms of accomplishments and what our actual goals are. But I think bringing this report forward to begin with, and then the other thing is, just kind of stepping back in terms of the input, that we need locally as well. I think that, in terms, it's done extremely well, like putting this report together midway. Certainly it is important. We do have accomplishments in Perth East, and we certainly do have goals, and we want to have, absolutely, council want to have those reflected as well. But, in fairness, by putting all of this together, that would be at this point because of that transition, that is forthcoming. But it's been a huge project even to put together to this point because of the transition involved as well.
Okay,
Teresa, so just so I'm clear, you're saying that there's more to come on this? Is that, so the parts that we're missing, is that my understanding? So we're going to be receiving that as per the original motion, it's coming? Am I understanding that?
In terms of, there will be, correct, Amara, in terms of identifying what are our accomplishments, each municipality, looking at those in terms of each, what the accomplishments are, what the goals are, and that type of thing forthcoming.
So sorry, I just, again, want to make sure I'm very clear on this. So it also says with regards to each municipality's conservation and demand management plan. So that's in the works. So the staff person that Mayor's been working with, is that in, where's the draft and where's the status on that?
In terms of our energy management plan as well, there are some things in the background that those things aren't necessarily the council are aware of. In terms of our energy reporting and analysis and that type of thing, Amara and her predecessor have certainly been of a great assistance to the municipality in terms of input, filing those, that reporting in term, because there is that expertise, and they work in coordination with our staff regarding it. Locally, we need to be tracking all of our energy, whether it's our hydro and that type of thing. And those, we have to have reporting on that. So those are kind of some of the things in the background that those things with this position, with the coordinator position, is of great assistance to us in the municipality.
So Tracy, I apologize. I really want to make sure I'm clear on this. So that's great that that's been helpful, but to be clear, Teresa, are we receiving, in the original motion from 2019, it was stated that we were going to be receiving this updated plan. So when is that coming to council? Is it coming to council? The other items that you speak of, that seems to be separate to what's referenced. So I just want to be clear, what can council expect and what is the timelines that we can expect these reports to be coming forward to council?
I will be completely honest. I do not have the timeline in front of me, but it's certainly something that I can forward to. We will be in discussion and I can forward to all council members.
Okay, are there any other questions? Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess real quick. I'm just wondering, is there a compliance date for this? I may have missed it in the report. Consultant Catrick, I'm speaking. I'm asking a question of you. Is there a compliance date we have to be cognizant of? And I know that we have to keep in mind the contract deadline. We've already gone over that a little bit in the past. So do we have time to have a little back and forth on this, or is there, do we have to make a yes or no decision shortly? Thank you.
So my understanding.
Oh.
Go ahead, Amara. Sorry.
So personally speaking, my contract ends in December. I think funding for the plan for the position has been extended until February 2022. As to the movement of the plan, to date, 4 councils have adopted it, and I will be moving forward in the implementation stages with those councils. My hope is that I can move forward with everyone so that we're all moving towards the same goal and on the same track. But I can't definitively say that there is a deadline for you to adopt this plan.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to let Hugh go next. He had his hand up first, and then we'll go back to Daryl.
No, I don't mind talking about pollution on Perth East page 112. There's a talk about sustainable development goals, 17 goals that transform our world. And I find that that's muddying the waters. And when we talk about looking through lenses, I mean, this will be about the third lens now that council's supposed to look through when we're doing things. And I think we're going to get enough lenses that we won't be able to see light at the end of the tunnel. I just find this making everything, talking about poverty and food and education and all that kind of stuff. I'm interested in talking about pollution, but this has gone way beyond talking about pollution, and it's going to be extremely costly. And for a rural municipality like us, like Councillor Broadhagen said, most of the stuff that's in the report, that's really great if you're in Kitchener-Waterloo, but for us, amending the building code and things like that, that's way beyond, that's a provincial responsibility. That's not ours. Just my thoughts.
Okay, and Daryl, you had your hand up again.
At the end of the day, it's federal government who's mandating this. It's interesting. There's lots of this programs getting on. I actually get phone calls from different people. It's no secret. My name's pretty public these days. It's interesting where they're sitting, and I don't know, they seem to reach out to me. Now, this here topic, it's almost like a natural heritage study. We can dissect what's good and what's bad. At the end of the day, we are council and we have say, and so much of it is overlapping like poverty. Like if I count back in the 3 years here in council, there's always another system, another angle, somebody coming in to tackle just one more system, just one more tax. This is the granddaddy right here of how to tackle poverty, how food insecurities, and it just keeps overwhelming. And it's just another program, the coffee story, just one cup of coffee. That's all it is. I hear this probably half a dozen times since I've been in council. And it just seems like it's overlapping of other programs. We have a community well-being, we have affordability committees, affordability, sustainability housing committees. There's just so many coming at us at so many angles. We do so much. We've done feasibility studies on solar systems, lighting ourselves already. We're doing that work. And it's just, there's stuff in this I find heavy-handed and committing us to that we ain't going to be able to get out of. And at the end of the day, you run out of spending other people's money. And it's tight for a lot of people right now. Farmers in particular, there's so many programs and so many regulations coming at them at different angles. And I see a lot of things in here that get pretty heavy handed. We work so close with the conservation authorities and all that already. Some of them have to go. Like, we do that work already. So there's so much in here that is overlapping of work we've done or are doing. And that is my concern. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have questions? So just going back to, oh, sorry, Jeremy.
Thanks, Rhonda. So when I'm looking at the action items in the larger part of the report towards the end, what is there, about 7 action items maybe in total, maybe a few more. Those action items are things that we're being asked to accept tonight, or are these things that can be referred back to our staff to actually see if they're feasible to implement? Like some of these things, some of the things are definitely kind of pie in the sky. That'd be great if that existed, or if we had the time to do that. While others were already in the midst of taking care of, whether at the county or at Perth East, right? So, like, does receiving this report tonight, I certainly hope it doesn't bind us to these different actions. Like they look to me to be recommendations, albeit in a different format than we're used to seeing. So I think given the amount of information that's in this report here, it would be good to either for us to look at it again or for staff to actually take a look at it and see if some of these things are even able to be implemented by us, because there's quite a few on here that I think are definitely high in the sky, and they're a little bit, maybe a little bit too large of projects for us to take on.
Okay, Jerry, do you want to weigh in at all? Everybody else has.
No, in regards to the projects or the things that we're doing, we've done. I don't know, Mayor, I guess we had a question or directed to all of us about what we have done, and the mayor did a great job in responding to that certain to one of the citizens. But yeah, maybe highlighting what we have done, and it sounds like that's all going to come back. But yeah, Perth East is on the way of getting things in order. I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Okay, so just going back to what staff are doing, staff have to track a whole lot of things, which is going to take an enormous amount of staff time, just so everyone is aware of that. Is it unreasonable to defer this and go back and ask what the work plan is so we know what the next steps are? And also, when this all started, I did not realize it was going to be such a huge project. So we have Stratford, St. Mary's, the county, and 4 lower tiers all put together. Should we be asking that maybe the urban centers should do their own thing and the rural centers do something else, because we're all a little different? I just want to put that to you. I'm not sure if that's where you want to go. Hugh, and then Jeremy.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think we need to go over this a whole lot more, because I think we do need a Perth East one. And I think that, as Councillor Broadhagen said, it seemed to be extremely towards an urban center, like a lot of the things like transportation and stuff like that. And our use of fuel for transportation and on-farm transportation and stuff. A lot of that stuff we're not going to be able to do much about, and almost I think any tractor over 50 horsepower, and Daryl, you can say if I'm wrong or not, they've had DEFT on since 2005. So I mean, those machines now are running so clean that there's not even any soot on the tailpipe and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot here that we need to go over this at least one more time anyway, and kind of sort through this and find out what will work for Perth East. And I do agree that with you, Mayor, that I think St. Mary's and Stratford would be far better off going in whatever direction they go in, and the 4 lower tiers work together, because just the nature of our communities are so different. My thought.
And Jeremy, you had your hand up next, and then I'll go to Daryl.
Yeah, it was just pertaining to the comment that you had made. I think that's what Councillor Broadhagen was looking for, is a more specific report to our area that comes with specific recommendations to what we could do. And then we can filter through it as council and decide what's actually actionable for us based on the specific items for our area. And I'd be on board for that if we can get that report, get this one pared down to what's specific to us. And then we review it and have staff review it and see what we actually want to and can take action on.
Daryl?
Yeah, this is just the last here. So I'll clear up here, and the farmers in the group and homeowners know we just did a census this year. The federal government has compiled a pile of data on farming operations. What they've done with it, are they doing anything with it? I'm not sure, but they have piled a lot of data. And it's pretty in-depth, that census. And they know what we're planting, how many acres, forages, corn, crops. And there's a couple of us here, like this a question from Farm Crops is, it's noted to be more than the Amazon rainforest. NASA's proved that in the US Midwest, and that is here too. We run extremely negative with pollution in Perth, I assure you. And that data that the federal government has captured is very important for this, and it could be used in this modeling. And I'm wondering if we could get a hold of that with the amount of acres we have and what's going on, more pinpoint this is a question that is going on about agriculture crops. And the DEF systems, yeah, there's 0 emissions out of a diesel engine with a DEF system. I'll tell you firsthand, you can put your face right up to it and breathe as hard as you want, kind of like our sewer treatment plant in Shakespeare. I've done it, and it's clean as a whip. It's that clean. Actually, in polluted areas in third world countries, for sure, 100%, the air coming out of the exhaust is more clear than what's going in. That being said, they tend not to adopt those systems there. And it's very wild. It's the technology that is going on in the agriculture community. And I can't believe the steering committee up in North Perth, there's so many farmers out there who wouldn't have touched on that. It's unbelievable. It's a question that goes on by far. Thank you.
Okay, Amanda?
So to answer your question, Rhonda, that you posed to the council group, I think that's a great path forward. I think also we already have some of that list of responses of all the things that we're already doing and providing that to Amira for reference, and recognizing that maybe perhaps we can come up with some more tangible goals for Perth East that make sense, and the rural municipalities. That snapshot of here's where we are now and here's some opportunities for us. I just again, because Ellis Ward, the one that I represent, it is very rural, and I grew up on a farm. Just again, I'm just a little interesting piece of information, and it's not Perth East specific, but one of the most endangered ecosystems of the world is not the rainforest. It's not the coral reef. It's actually the native prairie grasslands in Western Canada. And so the reason why we still have that ecosystem in Canada is thanks to farmers and ranchers that have their animals grazing on that land. And for anyone who's interested in this, there is a documentary called Guardians of the Grasslands. It's very short, but it would be of interest to anyone. And I would very much like to see a rural lens put on this work. There's got to be a case study or some information out there of rural areas, in terms of the work that they're doing in this area of climate change. That needs to be included. Otherwise, if the content doesn't change, I can't support it. And also, once again, the references to hiring 3 full staff, that is not something that I will be supporting. So unless there's changes to the content and a work plan, there needs to be a work plan included. This is something that I can't support, but I think if we can find a path forward, I think those are some really good opportunities. And once again, if we already have that great list of information of things that we've already done, you don't have to go back and find that. We can supply that list to you, and anything that you need from us, whether it's counselors or staff, to help you, make sure that, we come up with a plan that we can implement. I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Okay, Jerry, you had your hand up.
Yes, well, I'm in agreement to most that's been said about each township having, its own report per se. The funding, though, was given to complete this report. So I'm curious as to if we go and I think Tamara said the 4 municipalities have accepted this and starting the implementation. I'm just curious as if we go and say, okay, we're not going to accept this report. We want a plan for Perth East. So where does the funding come for that? Will that be something internal? Will we have to go to the feds? And they've already given the funding for this report. Will we have to go elsewhere, or will this be something, if we decide to do this separately, will this be coming from our own coffers?
Okay, who wants to help answer that? I think we can ask the questions, Jerry. Like, we can ask for a work plan. We can ask, like when it was originally started, it was seven of us, and we can ask if it's more feasible now to split apart. Like, the grant only goes until, I think it's February of 2022, and then either the municipalities pick up the costs or another grant is applied for. So if we can get our answers by then, we can ask for the work plan, where it's going, what's coming to us next, so we know. And we can ask, if it's more feasible to have the rules separate from the urban. And we could stay in it till then. And then from then on, I think then we have to decide how we're going to move forward with everybody else. County Council realizes this is a big undertaking. It's been said more than once, and it is actually coming to County Council on Thursday. And Hugh and Daryl and I can raise some concerns there too and ask the same questions and see and then I'm hoping that the CAOs can get together, and maybe the mayors need to be at it too, and we can iron some of these concerns out. So, Hugh?
If you remember, or Mary, I guess the funding ended last year, did it not? Because we all had to pass resolutions to fund the position for next year, did we not? So I thought the funding was already done for this.
No, the funding has been extended until February 2022.
I think that was the municipalities that picked up that funding. I don't think that was from the original grant. I think the original grant ended last year. And so Jerry, we're already putting the money in to pay for this. It's not the grant anymore. I could be wrong on that.
We'll get clarification on that, because Chris Snell mentioned it at their meeting last night that it was extended, but you are correct. We did have a report this year about extending it to the end of this year. So we will get clarification on that, of where the grants are and what they're covering and how long they're going to, if they're still there or not. So we will get clarification on that and bring that back. So in the meantime, we do have a motion, and I'm just wondering what you want to, we're going to receive it for information. what else do you want in there? Do you want that we ask for a work plan moving forward? Is one thing we ask for, Andrew?
Just listening to the conversation, it sounds like we have a lot of knowledge, and for the resolution, I'm thinking there's going to need to be some type of significant feedback from people I'm seeing on the screen here who seem to have some good direction. So I'm not, whatever we do, we need to take the document and redact what we don't like, or comment on the document we don't like, to speed up the process and end up with a result that something we're happy with. So that needs to be part of whatever process goes forward. So that would be what I would say is a key to getting this done.
Okay, so what I heard was that we want to see a work plan and we want to see what's coming forward for Perth East. Is that what everyone else heard? Carol?
Yeah, more itemized per municipality for sure is what is being said here. It's very important, unique to each municipality, and to be able to retract what's not necessary. Like, there's going to be public meetings on this eventually because it's going to get silly. There's people watching it already. Yeah. So more itemized per municipality. And I'd also like to see the data from the census. If we can get that information, it's so important what we know we're growing. And it's just, yeah, it's so important we get that information in regards to agricultural crops.
But I don't think the data on the agriculture crops has been collected to date. Is that correct, Amara?
No, it has not. And also I'm not aware of the document that Councillor Hurlick is speaking of, the census data. But definitely I will look into it and see if it is public, if it has been published as yet.
OMAFRA, recommendations of OMAFRA as well has piles of data on this. Amanda alluded to that too, the importance of carbon sequestration through agriculture.
Okay, so Amanda?
I just, and I mean, this is probably a question to take back, but one of the things that should have been included was the consultation information, and perhaps that wasn't passed on to Amira during the transition. That probably happened before her time. So would be interesting to know if that information was captured. So that's something that we should be asking North Perth, because that should be captured in some form going forward in the report, that because there was consultations and there needs to be that needs to be referenced and somehow accounted for in a, you know, whether it's summary or what have you, in the plan. We need a work plan. We need something very specific to Perth East, and certainly we can provide her with the work that we've done to date. And we need to, in terms of the suggestions, I know that there were 7 ideas put forward, but perhaps there needs to be something, again, to Councillor Matheson's point, there needs to be things that are really, really tangible, things that we can actually implement and that make sense for our current staff to be able to properly implement. So I think that is the other key thing, because I won't be supporting anything unless the content is something that, you know, we're all going to be comfortable with. So I think those are the work plan needs to be part of this. The data, if it exists, if that was captured in the transition, we need to somehow get that information. It needs to be included, because I have got, the reason why I'm asking this is that I have personally got calls from taxpayers in the, you know, specifically the Grain Farmers of Ontario, like the local chapter, that have raised concerns about this, have noted that there has been some outreach done, and have inquired about the status of, you know, what feedback was included, and that has not been captured. And it's not, again, once again, not a fault to your own. This is work that was done before your time. But if that information exists in the transition, we need to somehow include that. If it's lost or what have you, that's obviously something that we can't control. We need to move forward. But we need Perth specific and again, there's references in the UN across the report. We need perhaps a case study or something that's tangible of a rural municipality. Otherwise, it's something that it's not possible to implement. There's no sense of proving something that we can't implement, right? It's not fair to the elected officials that have to have accountability to the public or our staff. So that's just, again, my concerns. I just want to make sure that those things are captured before we move forward.
Okay, so moving forward, do we want all this in the motion or do you want just to defer? Like I've been making some notes as we've talked. So this is what I have so far. So the work plan going forward as to more itemized for each municipality. We want data collected so far in regards to consultations. Moving forward, should the 7 municipalities stay together or should they be in rural and urban? And the 7 items that were brought forward, we need more detail. Is that what you want all in a motion or you want it just to defer and staff takes a direction to Amanda?
I don't think we have time to defer. So look, I mean, let's look at the timelines. So this contract goes, we don't have much time left and what we're asking is a significant amount of work needed still. So that's sort of outstanding given the fact that we only received this report in October. So if we defer it, then we'll bring it back in the next meeting and we haven't resolved it and then it's not going to get done, right? So I think in order for us, if we want to keep this moving forward, I think I don't think we can defer it just given the tight timelines we're dealing with. Otherwise, this position is going to have to be extended again. So that's the risk if we don't, provide some direction tonight. That's just my thoughts.
So I'm confused what you want to do. Hugh?
No, I think if we defer, then we do get some more information and stuff like that. It'll make a far better report if we could get a bit more information and see what can turn up by the time we have our next meeting. I don't think putting it off until the next meeting shouldn't be that major of a stumbling block.
Hey, Jeremy?
Receiving the report for information is not creating any actionable items that I see. I think what you've just brought up, receiving for information and asking for clarification on those items that you just indicated, I think that's the way that we move forward, and I will move that.
Okay, so we have it moved by Jeremy. Do we have a seconder? Amanda, you're seconded? Okay, so is everyone clear? So the Council of the Township of Perth East received the presentation from Amara Kartrick, Climate Change Coordinator, Municipality of North Perth, creating a healthy environment greenhouse gas reduction plan for information, and the work plan going forward as to more itemized for each municipality, the data collected so far in regards to the consultations, how we're going to move forward as 7 townships, or do we divide into the rural and urban split? And the 7 items that are brought forward, we want more detail. Is that correct?
Is 7 the correct amount of items? I don't know that that's the exact amount of items. I just use that as an example. There's probably a few more, but I mean, more detail on the items that are requesting action.
Okay, so items brought forward for more detail for items brought forward on actions.
I mean, presumably that will be in the report that's created specific to us. Right? So.
Okay, is everyone clear? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Amara. I think, Daryl, you want to say something first before we leave?
There was a seconder there, was there? I'm just trying to.
Yeah, Amanda.
She,
Jeremy moved and Amanda second.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. It's been
Thanks, Amara. You've done a tremendous amount of work, and we all acknowledge that you come in the middle of this, and that makes it pretty tough and pretty hard to pick up where someone else had started, and for you to move. And we appreciate everything you've done, and we look forward to seeing you again when you come back and have some of our questions.
Thank you for having me, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night. Okay, now we're going to move to our third delegation, and that is Steve Burns. He's the senior engineer from BM Ross and Associates. And Steve, welcome to Perth East, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'll just try and get my presentation up on the screen here.
Okay, it's good. We can.
Yeah. Okay, great. I always worry about that. So I'm here to talk about the Shakespeare water system, and specifically the arsenic iron treatment project that's been ongoing for some time. But I also want to recommend to council that you consider doing a study that would look at what we're doing in a bigger context. First thing I think that is important to look at is to investigate the possibility of actually providing treatment at an alternate location that's all alternate to the existing well site, and I'll provide detail on that. And if we're actually going to do that, then I think it's valuable to look at the provision of storage. The Shakespeare water supply has no storage, and because of that, there's some consequences and some levels of service issues that would be addressed through storage, and an alternate location would provide an opportunity to do something about that. And then the last one is, I would think the study should look at the potential expansion of service to the whole community. And I'm not presenting that with the idea that we would extend service. It's more from the context that whatever is built here should not prevent expansion to the whole community, or not deter it. And ideally, it should fit into that potential expansion when it occurs. So just kind of an update of where we are. There are two wells in Shakespeare. Both of them they're both at the same location. They have arsenic concentrations that range from about 12 to about 10 micrograms per liter to up to sometimes as much as 16, typically around 12, and the standard is 10. So treatment to reduce the arsenic concentrations is required. And the municipality retained the Walkerton Clean Water Center to do pilot testing to look at different technologies that might be used to lower the arsenic concentrations. And all of the technologies that were looked at and are essentially feasible here involves some form of filtration. So armed with that testing, the municipality went out to various equipment suppliers, manufacturers, and asked for proposals regarding the actual treatment equipment. And they received you received 4 proposals, and that actually involve 3 different technologies. The costs of the equipment, just the equipment alone, so it ranged from just under $300,000 to just under $500,000. So substantial cost. We've been through the details of the proposals with staff, and I think staff have in mind a preferred technology there. But once a decision was made to apply for an ISIP grant, which we won't hear an answer on till next spring, no decision has been made, no actual choice has been made of a preferred technology. So there's a preference, but we haven't narrowed it down to one, because if we come back to this in the spring, there may be other opportunities. So we have good information, and we'll keep it for future reference. So what we did learn through that process of going out and looking at equipment is that we would have to expand the pump house by, we essentially double its size, and probably slightly more than double. And a lot of that is driven by the fact that one of the things we learned through the pilot testing was that all the technologies that work here require that filters be backwashed. And because we can't use the existing supply to both supply the system and backwash at the same time, we need to build storage in there for backwash. And we know that that in addition to having a building twice as big, we'd have a building height almost twice as high for any addition that we put. We know from trying to figure out how this would be done that there would have to be extensive renovations, modifications to the electrical system. And we could potentially need a larger electrical service size, and we get into what we call phase issues. The current power supply to the building is single phase, which is typical for smaller uses, residential uses, and so on. But we're starting to get equipment sizes that would really benefit from being 3-phase. So that's not a insurmountable issue. It's something we knew was coming, but it's something that might be nice to address if it's possible. The most important thing is that the site is very constrained. It's only about 6 meters wide. The existing pump house building has a little less than a meter on either side around it to get access to the back of the property and so on. So that is probably the key thing that triggered this interest in looking at alternatives, is the constrained size of the site. And that constrained area, we feel, is going to cause result in anything that we do there being quite expensive. And in today's market, where it's hard to find contractors, it's hard to get materials, and it's hard to find even contractors that you can get, have trouble finding labor. We could see these costs in today's market being more than $1 million, which is really like significant for a small system like this. This is just a picture to show when I talk about the site being constrained. So what we're doing is we're standing at the back of the property looking at the pump house. In the foreground there is well number 2 that was drilled a couple of years ago and put in service. Well number 1 is in the pump house itself, but you can, in the area that is where the sod has been stripped, that's really essentially the property line. So you can see the constraints that we would have in trying to add a relatively large addition to the back of the building. So we talked this over with the Ministry of the Environment and the Health Unit. And really, when the opportunity came to apply for a grant, and we found out that we would not get a ruling on the grant until next spring, we approached the Ministry and the Health Unit about extending the regulatory relief. That relief allows you to today have arsenic concentrations that are greater than 10. And the whole project here is to eventually get to less than 10, but the ministry has agreed to extend the relief for another almost 2 years, 23 months, in order to find out whether or not a grant is in place, and if council so wishes to look at ways that we might be able to reduce the costs or change the level of service. So this all comes to a recommendation to do some additional investigation. And there's a number of reasons we might do this, and why you might consider doing this. If, as I said right at the beginning, the idea, in order to get away from the constrained site, we have the opportunity to move the treatment system to some other location. We would still retain the existing wells and everything that is there, but we would pump untreated water to a different location that had sufficient space and was appropriately located and sized. And money that we would potentially spend on a constrained site, we can use to actually do a better job at another location. So that's so the key thing here is to look at providing the treatment at an alternate location. Now, as soon as you look into that, it begins to create more opportunities. If we're going to have another location, then there is the possibility of incorporating significant water storage into that other location. So why would you do that? Well, water storage would automatically increase the sort of effective supply by about 50%. So you would be able to service 50% more properties from the same well location if you had properly sized storage facilities. The other thing that you can do with storage is that you it really increases the security of the supply. If there's some problem with your well site or water main break at the block away from the well or whatever, you have storage in another location to supply from. So there's a security benefit. There's also the potential with the right size storage and equipment to provide fire protection. The Shakespeare water system does not now provide fire protection. And another benefit, I didn't get it on the slide, thought of it later, is that you could actually properly flush the water mains. We know from experience that iron accumulates in the lines, and with the well supply that we have, it's very difficult, it's challenging to properly flush. And supplying from storage would allow that to happen and really improve the opportunities for maintenance. Now, so looking at another site then gives the opportunity to look at storage. but it also creates another opportunity. And if we're going to build a building, a pump house at another location with a storage facility, you might consider that as a location for a third well. At this point in time, you don't need a third well, but if you were to ever serve the whole community, you would need a third well. And so this storage site, treatment site, could potentially be a good location for a third well. And just when I talk about service to the whole community, about 60% of the properties are now on private supplies. Only about 40% are actually on the existing system. So this is not, again, recommending that you service the whole community. That's not the intent here. It's recommending giving consideration to that in the planning of the treatment and storage, so that we don't you make sure that you're set yourself up for benefit in the future and not do anything to detract from that. Now, in order to construct waterworks facilities in a municipality in Ontario, you have to proceed with a class environmental assessment. And to me, there's real advantages to using that process. It's required, but even if it weren't, there's an advantage. It's a good mechanism to be transparent about what you do, communicate what you're doing and thinking, and getting feedback from the stakeholders, property owners or whatever, regarding what they think about these alternatives and what you're doing. So you'd have the detailed review of alternatives, and you'd report on any impacts, including what the potential costs might be to users. So all of that information sort of gets looked at and becomes public information. The next bullet there talks about to investigate the potential of a third well requires actual construction of that well, and I'll come to that again in a second. But so the budget for the studies is if we were going to only look for a site for treatment and storage, if we're just going to start from the beginning and say it's not going to have a well, then that environmental assessment we expect will cost in the order of $60,000. It's there's in that we would look at all the sites that are property that is currently owned by the township in Shakespeare as a kind of a first run and investigate their feasibility. If none of them appear feasible, then we're going to have to look at the potential of purchasing property to build treatment and storage facility. But you own a number of properties there, so having to acquire another one is less likely. In the site comparison, we would it's largely going to be economic. We have to pump the raw water to it, so that involves a water main, and then we have to build a pump house and the treatment facility and potentially a storage facility, and these would all be looked at. There's different potential sizes and shapes and so on, so all of these things get looked at and hashed out, and a lot of that is done in conjunction with the operations staff and so on. Now, if there was a thought that treatment and storage site might be a good location for a future third well, then the effort gets significantly different. We would, well supplies in Shakespeare are bedrock well supplies. And until you drill a well into the bedrock, you never can be completely confident of how much water you're going to get or the quality that would be involved. And there's also, in this day and age, there's the source water protection issues as well. So it would change that $60,000 to about $200,000. But 120 of that would actually construct and test the well, so which would be an asset that you would have for the future when you chose to bring it online. And then depending on the actual site and the neighborhood that it's in and a whole variety of things, source water protection costs could be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 on top of that 200. So it's a pretty significant effort, but it's a pretty significant project in terms of looking at really the long-term future water supply for Shakespeare. And the actual goal in terms of timing goal in terms of doing all of this would be to have this complete by next spring, so it coincides with the ruling that you would get on your ISIP grant, which hopefully would be a positive ruling that you would indeed get a grant for this. So I think at that I could leave that and try and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, questions?
Yeah, just one. Thanks for that, Burns. We've got we kind of got two options. The first one is the treatment storage when it comes to the budgets and a treatment and storage site would be 60,000. You've said a treatment and storage site with a third well would be 200. Does that option include the investigation of considering the whole community, or is that a third option?
No, actually both do, but it would be a more limited investigation. The 60,000 one would be a little more limited in terms of servicing the whole community, because the current supply won't serve the whole community. But it would be part of what we would consider.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I want to reinforce that what we would be looking at is not planning to service it, but making sure we understand what we're building or potentially building, make sure it fits into that complete service picture in the future.
Okay, Hugh?
Just three questions. Like we do that backwater wash, what happens to that water that you backwash with? What do you use that for?
It would go into the sanitary sewer and go to the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, okay. Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
If you, when you have this building and it treats the water, would that help with the, some people complain about the taste of the chlorine in the water. Would this help clean up the water and the taste in the water by putting it through this process?
It will definitely clean up the water. I can't be confident that there won't still be a chlorine taste. I mean, we add chlorine, we have to add chlorine. It's a requirement, it's necessary. And some people are very sensitive to the taste of chlorine. So I would hope it would be better because of the treatment we do. But I can't be confident that that issue would completely go away.
Okay, I just wondered if you were taking it from well 1 or 2, the water, and then moving it someplace else cleaning it, if you want to call it that, and then moving it out to somebody else and like bringing it back to wherever you needed it, that would give you enough distance and time that it would maybe change the taste a bit. But the other question I have is when you're drilling the well, would these wells, would they be all going into the same layer of water, like the same reservoir of water, or would you think that they would be in maybe different reservoirs, so you're not pumping all the water out of the same reservoir?
The two existing wells essentially pump from the same location in the rock. So they're really twins, take water from the same place. If we were planning on constructing a third well, one of the considerations would be to keep it far enough away that it's not affecting the existing wells. It might really still be taking water from the same location, but it would be far enough away that it doesn't negatively influence. So I hope that, yep.
Okay, anyone else with questions? Andrew?
Well, Mr. Burns, for a while. Thanks for coming to give us a report. What would COVID, what would a public consultation look like during COVID? Been done.
Yeah. Generally, what's being done is meetings just like this, by Zoom or some other method. We are not yet in an environment where municipalities are having real traditional public meetings. So they're meetings like this. People are given an opportunity to register with the municipality and say first of all, we provide reports, background information, make it all available to the public, and then say that on such and such a date, we're going to present this information. And if they want to ask questions or comment, they just register with the municipality and we have a meeting, something like this.
Okay, Andrew?
Just continue on if I may, please. So can it facilitate 200, 300, 400 people in the public consultation process under COVID?
I expect that would be challenging. If that was really the level of interest, we'd have to find another way to do it or have multiple meetings or something like that.
I'll just continue if I may, Mayor Eggets. So what I'm hearing is from the report that if a third well option was chosen within in a remote filtering system, that it could be basically anywhere within the settlement area. So it sounds like practically we're going to run the water out of the pipes down to the treatment facility and then back up to connection, or since we're not talking about town-wide water, so we have to run it back up. Now, the cost of that, without knowing much, I know we made the realization that contractors are hard to get. Prices are high on everything these days. When will we know that comparison between fixing it at the source at the two wells up top or not? To me, just off the top of my head, it seems like the cost is definitely going to be more for running half a kilometer of pipe two ways and constructing the larger unit. So was there any more information available on, what it costs to run a foot of meter of pipe these days? Because I guess it'd be like 4 or 2 pipes, right? 2 pipes, 1 pipe going down and 1 coming back.
Actually, it would only we'd only have to run it one way, because ideally you would pick a location. Like the existing distribution system gets into much of the community now. Not everybody's connected, but but it does get around Shakespeare. So we'd have to take the raw water from the present location and pump it. So that is the one. But once we've treated it, we just make the connect to the closest location. So which wouldn't necessarily have to be very far at all. So I am not expecting that this will necessarily be a less costly alternative. What I think suggesting is that it would provide a better level of service and that would justify paying a little more.
Okay, Andrew?
Well, thanks. That makes sense. I'm guessing if you find the closest point, which is where I'm thinking it will probably be around Webster Street area. But so with the building, 5 meters tall. So I'm not sure. I think what's our bylaw for building height? I think it's like 4 point something. So it's fairly close to our zoning bylaw requirements. Is there no room to do that there effectively? And obviously we're not going to, if we move to a third one, we're not going to abandon those wells. They'll obviously be continued to use both wells, correct?
That's correct. But if we provide storage if we go to an alternate location and it looks like it's valuable to provide storage, then we would have a different type of storage and we wouldn't need a 5 meter building height. We do at the present location, just because of the site is constrained, you need something tall to avoid having something big in diameter.
So as far as the capacity, would be like our second well right now isn't used. Would the third well be used, or would that be brought online for expansion? So are we drilling a well that's just going to sit there as a backup well? Is my concern.
Yeah, you would be able to make that decision once you had it, whether you wanted to bring it on initially. You would not need it for capacity reasons, but there might be a good reason from a security standpoint to equipment, but that's a choice you can make down the road. Obviously, it will cost more to add it.
Keep going.
As far it sounds like your company will be helping possibly with the granting process. Is the success based on putting a large system in for, 160 houses with, hopefully our friends in the county would allow a settlement area to expand. Is that going to be a successful application based on basically 160 houses? What's your feeling on that?
Well, the current application that's been made was really to provide the treatment system. And we would be doing, if after the study, it looked like the best solution is to have the treatment system somewhere else, we'd have to be explaining that to the grant people that we want to use the money in a different way, but it's still to provide the treatment system.
That's perfect. That's obviously paramount to get the water cleaned up. If anybody else has anything, I got a couple other things I got to go through on the report, but.
Okay, Darrell?
No, great. Thanks. This definitely affects the north part of the hamlet as well. I do recall we had just a bit of a verbal talk once of there is an existing lot with that well up off of Miller there, and it could house extra area. There was talk about purchasing that, and the owner even considered selling it. I know we kind of left it that maybe Public Works would see if they wanted to sell that. There again, that'd be something we could potentially look at it's just in behind an existing mill and make a nice, clad style, there's so many nice options and it would look almost like a house and it wouldn't be so tall. Has that ever been looked into, Wes, that lot there? Is that something to consider, that part lot?
Yes, I have talked to the owner of the property. He definitely would be interested in some negotiations, but I think the big thing would be is he would, selling the property, they would want to know what size, what the building would be looking like and all that type of thing. It's still not it's at the end of the day, it's probably not ideal. It doesn't line up perfectly with the existing site that we have. It would be on an angle. And as you know, a lot isn't that big. It would be, there would still be some constraints.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone else with questions? See no questions. We do have a motion to receive for information. So the Council of Township of Perth East received the presentation from Steve Byrne, Senior Engineer, BM Ross and Associates Limited, Shakespeare Water System for information. Do we have a mover moved by Jerry?
No question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The second part is that we proceed with the EA. And part of the recommendation on.
Okay, so then we're going to.
Okay, we're receiving this
report.
information. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to bring Russ's report, and that in that part is received to approve the initiation. So, okay. So first, we need a motion.
I'll move this one.
Yeah, we need to motion to accept Mr. Burns' report. Do we have a seconder? Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, Mr. Burns, if you would just stay with us, that would be great. While we go to 8.5.1, which we moved on the agenda, and that's the process for expansion of Shakespeare drinking water system. And I'll turn the floor over to Wes.
Thanks. So just going back a little bit in history, just so that council remembers that this was through the visioning that this was basically initiated through the council visioning. And Steve has did a very good job on the report. So I think at the end of the day, we're looking for council to, we need to think outside of the box here a little bit. If we want Shakespeare to expand, we're looking at, we need a bigger spot to do that. And if council doesn't wish to see anything change as far as expanding, then we would have to work with the existing footprint. But I think this is something that definitely we need to consider to moving it to a site where we have less constraints. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Wes? Daryl?
No, and Wes touched on the fact that the existing site there, the Lutner subdivision, is a lot, it's not straight. It is a lot here. There's been a little, people are talking already. It's a little not floating, ensuring that this isn't a mandatory hookup, but we are tied and people need to get this arsenic issue under control. And as long as it's clear that this isn't demanding, I know there's going to be people reaching out here already talking that it isn't demanding people hook up right away. We need to do something different here, that's for sure. We keep getting our heads up to the top end there. And the fact that if we had some storage capacity, better water flushing for existing system, something has to happen. I do agree. And that way, in the event of expansion, we're prepared. We look into some grant money. But again, as long as this isn't a mandatory hook, I think this will be understandable, and because the whole top end is fully aware there's this arsenic issue. And thanks.
Okay, so just my understanding of this is that this EA is going to take 2 to 3 years. Am I correct on that, Wes? At least to get approval. That's where the way we keep going. Also, it will be looked at then of the people who have already existing systems. It's not saying that everybody has to hook up on day one. Council would then determine the length of time that their well could be. Say if somebody put a well in now, council would determine that if a well is 15 years old, 20 years old, 10 years old, of when those people would have to hook up. But eventually they will. And anybody building new would automatically hook up. There would be no other option. They could not drill a well. So Wes, am I correct in my comments? Or do you want to add something?
The only thing is with the EA process, we would be hopeful that we would have it in place before the 3 years were up. We definitely, like, we would, if we got council approved us starting that process, we would be hopeful that something would be in place, you know, by the spring, or at least a good start on it, that we would have some information that we could bring back and get the public consultation stuff and everything going. So that should not take the 3 years.
Yeah.
Am I right, Steve, on that?
Yeah, that's correct. Really, my hope would be to have the bulk of the study done by next spring, so that we have an answer on what the community wants to build about the same time we get an answer on the grant.
Okay, Andrew?
Just to clarify, that EA will include hooking up with running pipe to the town and hooking up every existing well owner, just to be clear.
We would identify in the study how that would be done and what it would cost. And we can back that then down to what it costs per property or whatever. So that information is out there. But I don't envision this study recommending that those water mains be built or those connections be made. It would just identify how that could be done and how it would affect anything else that we're building.
Okay, Daryl?
I mean, no, because at the end of the day, there isn't water lines up and down every street in Shakespeare, anything but. So that's the issue. I mean, I see no issue of it for further expansion and existing water system getting that fixed up. And as far as the remainder, yeah, as far as a mandatory hook, I know there's going to be, they're already sweating already. And you know, it's the right to refusal, my well, the whole stuff. And, you know, it's the little baby. This is the Shakespeare of what they have. And but on the other end, we have this other arsenic issue that we got to deal with. And it's a little difficult when we go to expand with supplying water and fire hydrants and things. I get it. So it's interesting here that you clear up that it necessarily doesn't include running pipes everywhere. The study. So interesting. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Questions, Andrew?
If it's okay with council and the mayor, I'd like to do a quick screen share, and the content will be how many wells are physically in Shakespeare from the Ontario well site. I'm going to try it here. I'm not sure how to do it.
I don't believe you can, Andrew. That information should have been sent into the clerk ahead of time. So can you just tell us how many wells there are in Shakespeare?
Well, there's 230. I think seeing it on the map would be very, very beneficial to council to see exactly how many $10,000 to $12,000 investments are in the town, private investments. If the chair doesn't want me to share that information, that's fine. But it's basically looks like a porcupine. There's wells everywhere. They put in 2 wells last week. So I'm hearing that this is not to put in water in Shakespeare, but the questions always come back to that we are actually going to study it. I think we have options, and if everybody's done, I'm going to forward a motion for council's consideration. It's going to put the rules in place that we talked about on July 13th meeting that we would put in when this report came in. And then we can use that as a guiding principle for how we're going to move ahead. So I can email that to everybody right now. And I see Teresa's out of office. Good for you, Teresa. Have some holidays. So it reads the Public Works Manager's recommendations, and it adds on as we do often, and that the Council of Township of Perth East directs staff to include the following minimum principles and options regarding any proposed drinking water expansion in the Village of Shakespeare, should it occur in the future. So cost recovery in full, well asset value for residents and businesses, and in brackets, all well owners, applies to all wells that would be required to, and I'm moving this, not be limited to, required to migrate to water. So I'm going to start over. Cost recovery of full well asset value for residents and businesses, all well owners, applies to all wells that would be required to migrate to a municipal water system should a village-wide system ever be implemented, including but not limited to deferred connection, regardless of well age or other means to achieve full cost recovery for private well owners. Well owner consensus needed. The second point, and these are in no particular order, investigation and expansion of water system that allows existing private well owners to continue to use their well asset as currently operated while still allowing for growth and enhanced fire service, including but not limited to full construction of a system with individual choice of connection to the system. So that's kind of one of the best options I think we have in this next item I'm going to read in the motion is construction of a third well with treatment storage as proposed, size for growth as we've just spoke about, expansion at a later date, which includes cost recovery principle in the first point, and voluntary connection. Ensure system design to the highest standard of water quality and strive to eliminate chemical residue, taste, or smell. Water rate and capital surcharge to commence at user connection. So I'm moving that. I know there's not a lot of time to look at it. I just kind of finished it, but most of these points are from the reports. And basically, as we discussed on July 13th, there is not a high aptitude, and we can learn that in EA for widespread water service in Shakespeare. Doesn't mean we can't construct a third well and move ahead with the county to open up settlement growth, and then they can use that, and because we have to do the arsenic anyway, right? So that's kind of a win-win. We get Chief Hunter can plop in some fire hydrants along the way when depending on where the third site goes, and that's kind of the best option. Third well sized appropriately for expansion at a later date, but still including the cost recovery principle as stated in the first point. So that's where I'm at with this.
So Andrew moved. Do we have a seconder? Daryl?
I'd just like to add a quick comment.
Are you seconded, Daryl? Let's do that first. Okay.
A quick comment. No, that's interesting. I read through that there, and I'm glad Andrew alluded to the fact that regardless of the age of wells, for example, I believe my well here, I looked on that same site Andrew's talking about, it was 1953. I know my brother, he feeds about 3,000 hogs out of a well from the 50s. You know, if the pump goes bad, you simply rip it up and put it down. First, the casings, there is the one rots out. I had a well driller tell me basically it was the quality of the material of the casing seems to be the issue. So the age of a well, if we ever get into that and determining, you know, what your cost recovery is and how long you have to hook up, that's just a great area to be going down. Yeah, because myself and my brother have very old wells that are top quality. I like what Andrew has there. It's safe, but yet it allows us to update our water system, and it isn't pushing it. Long story short, this is going to be a war. If this got out here wrong, Andrew and I are going to be dealing with this for a month straight when this hits the streets. And of course, the people people at the north end need to be fixed up. There's no arguing that. Thank you. And I'm seconding, of course.
Okay, anyone have questions on this? Jerry?
Just a little point of clarification then. Would this not be considered a notice of motion that would need to be brought back? Or just clarifying the process.
I'm going through that in my head as well, Jerry. This is different. We should have had this ahead of time. It's pretty tough now for council to sit and see all the items that are in this motion. Maybe I don't mean to put Eric and Teresa on the spot, but is Jerry correct in his indication that this should have came through as a notice of motion? I know council can add items to a motion, but when you add so many things, it makes it pretty tough that we are just seeing it now, I guess is my, Teresa, do you want to comment?
Typically when there is additional, so in terms of a motion that's put forward on the floor, if it's slightly amended to what the recommendation is, that would typically be something that council would consider. But typically when a motion adds a great deal of information, it would be in the best interest to forward it as a notice of provided or as a notice of motion, that it would be included with the agenda so council would have an opportunity to review it in advance and then follow the procedural bylaw in terms of the process.
Okay, any questions, Andrew?
Challenge that ruling. We modify and change and make up completely brand new motions constantly, and I can spend my weekend digging those up. This is one addition to the recommendation with parameters. I see no reason why we can't, and this is by no means constraining anything. It's if you read the minimum principles and options, it needs to be in writing if we move forward with this. And this is what I stated on July 13th, and I'm stating it again. If we're going to move on anything that looks like an expansion of the water system to existing well owners in Shakespeare, it was at 1 hour and 9 minutes into the meeting that we discussed that. And I was assured by the chair at that time that we would have that ability to do that during this, after discussion of this. So it's on tape. So this is what we need to do tonight. And I don't see that there's any reason why we can't add some parameters to this to satisfy going forward. And the study that's coming will tell us what the residents want, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to see parameters in place. I don't want a bunch of surprises in a year from now. And it's like, oh, well, this is going to happen because, we didn't say anything. So that's why it's in this format.
Jerry?
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from, Councilor McAlpine, but we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. I would really like to see the EA study first. And again, I've kind of just skimmed through your motion here, but they're all very good points. And if I was a homeowner in Shakespeare and built a well last month, I would be in that person's same position. But I think if we get the EA report and then we study that, and with consultants' help, with public works help, and then we can put these parameters that, again, they're good points, I think, but I think we should get the EA report first. My thought.
Okay, anyone else with questions of the motion?
Recorded vote, please.
I have one question. What do you mean by cost recovery? You mean that the municipality is to pay people for what their wells are worth? Or what does that mean?
Cost recovery would be, and we discussed this at that earlier meeting, if the well is worth whatever, $12,000, the going price of a well, depends on, some people want to service 2 houses, they want a bigger, they want different pressure systems, then whatever the current water rate is, you would backdate that based on what the current water rate is, maybe extrapolated over 10 years, and that would be their connection date. If it was a mandatory service-wide. So that would be one method to do it. So whatever the means of recovering the cost from these privately owned assets, no, it wouldn't be the township. It would be the fact that the well owner would not be incurring any costs until the connection date, which would be the value of their well. Right?
Okay, anyone else with comments? Daryl?
If the water line goes in front of someone's house and you can hook into it, but you're given a buyout period, your well's worth 15 grand, your water costs you $40 a month. What that alludes to, over such a time when that's used up, you put a price on every well, and then you have to hook up or you start paying for the service. But yeah, so that you can get your product. That is cost.
How do you do that? Everybody's well could be a different depth. One could be 100 feet, one could be 60 feet, one could be.
It's the same water table. A majority of them are similar in depth, and you just come up with concrete numbers. I mean, you're getting somebody in to drill a well. It's the difference of a couple $1,000 if they're at 75 feet or 150 feet. I have experience with this up north. So you take average well's worth and you go boom. The water's in front of your house today. You have so many days cost recovery. This is the average price of a well. We're trying to be fair, and that's what Andrew's alluding to. And it's good methodology. I actually really like it. Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I do really like what Andrew's doing here too. It all makes sense to why we would want to do this, but having it put in front of me now and expected to vote on it now, I'm not sure what the ramifications of saying some of these things are, or at this point. So I'm going to be voting against it at this point, with the hope that, you know, eventually most of these things do get built back into it. But having it put in front of me tonight and expecting to have me fully understand exactly everything that's going on, I'm not prepared to vote in favor of it right now. So I hope that doesn't affect how we can vote on it at a later date. But that's where I'm at.
I believe it could come back as a reconsideration at a later date. Is that correct? Teresa? Eric? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Jerry and then Amanda.
Yeah, again, I'm not fully, but I support the majority of all these points that Councilman McAlpine's brought up. But at this point, the EA does not bind us in any way to do anything. We could bring this back again after the EA study, hopefully in the spring. So because it's coming to us now, I'm willing to support majority of these things after an EA study, but I can't support it at this point until after an EA study, and then we do something.
Okay, Amanda?
It's more procedure question. So obviously a motion was put forward and there was a seconder, so it's on the floor, but then it was raised that perhaps this should have been a notice of motion. So what is the determination? Because again, back to Councillor Matheson's point, like there's some really good information that Councillor McAlpine's put forward, but obviously we don't want to, I don't want to say jeopardize, but you know, we want to make sure that, you know, we consider that. So I want to get clarity in terms of is this been accepted, Rhonda, as the chair, that this is the motion that's on the floor, or is the procedure that this is supposed to be, should have been a notice of motion? I just want to get clarity on what's next steps.
So my understanding is the motion is on the floor. I guess it's no different than if someone added, as we did earlier, to a motion, because the original motion is there, that we receive it for information, it go to the budget, and then these extra parameters are included. So it is a motion that will go forward. If it is not, if it is defeated, then it can come back as a reconsideration in the future. Okay, more, Jeremy?
Sorry, if construction does start on this and, or whatever it does, there's some sort of agreement, Wes, that's put forward that different things like this would be put into. Does that mean that this might not have to come back as a reconsideration if it's in sort of the agreement of the plan for the water system? Or will it still have to come back as a motion of reconsideration if it doesn't pass here, even if those things are in that agreement on the water system?
So just so I understand, what you're saying, Jeremy, is that through the EA process, if all those comments were incorporated in that, then you're thinking that it wouldn't have to come back as a reconsideration. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, like if this all goes ahead in a couple of years, whatever the timeline is, there will be some sort of a written agreement that outlines when people would have to connect or when they would connect and what basically all of Andrew's things would be in there, presumably. But it would not come to council in the version of a motion like this. It would come to council in the version of an actual agreement for hooking up. So it wouldn't be in a formal motion like this. It would be in an agreement that we'd have to put forward. So I guess the question is, at that point, we would not have to necessarily have a motion to reconsider. It would be just accepting that agreement.
Yeah, I think if council remembers when the wastewater treatment plant went in, there was similar things that were done. Like if a person had a septic system that was so many years old, they had a grace period before they needed to connect to the system. So I'm sure that there could be an agreement of some sort made.
Okay. Andrew, you have the last word.
So if you look at the list in detail, it repeatedly says voluntary connection. People are going to want voluntary connection. If we do the third well, which is talks about too, with expanded ready to go for whatever settlement area expansion or whatever there is, then you can service those no problem. People don't want to go on town water. There's been problems that aren't our fault with the existing town water. They don't want it. They don't want to drink chlorine and they don't want it. So that's why I want to have this put in place ahead of time so that we can use these parameters to guide the process. It's a laundry list. It gives a bunch of vague options that talk about how we want to process it. The whole conversation here has been about how are we going to make people hook up. That's not the conversation, the complete conversation. And I appreciate that it's a lot to read in a couple of seconds, but that's what it is. It's very benign, it's very vague, but it has the pieces in it that put the basic parameters as stated in the motion, the guiding principles of the intent. So there's options, and depending on the EA, which we have to see what's going to happen, we will use these principles. And if absolutely, say the province or somebody says we have to hook everybody up in Shakespeare to get the money or whatever, and then we have to make that decision at that time on how we're going to do it. But I want it in writing beforehand because this stuff gets lost. This could easily move into the next term of council, and they won't have the depth of knowledge that we have on this that we've already discussed as the initiators. This needs to go forward with these big things. I'm prepared to defer for everybody to read it and bring it back. If that's okay, defer this entire motion on this report. If everybody wants time to read it and ask questions and maybe make some amendments. But the spirit is that people need a choice for their private asset on their own land, whether they want to hook up or not. This is not like the health and safety condition that was addressed when we did sewers and some of the sewage treatment on the private properties was in rough shape. They're haphazardly made over decades and decades. These are wells that all goes down to the same piece of bedrock. It's a pipe and a pump, and they're all the same. They all either produce water or they don't. They're all about the same depth. If I could show you that map, it would be a lot better. So hopefully that's enough information. I know I just gave you a lot of extra, but people won't want water. Maybe some will. So that has to be in there. We can't go ahead with the EA process without acknowledging that people don't want this project, right? So I'm not sure if the EA process is going to be show of hands, whatever kind of EA process it's going to be. I don't know if anybody remembers the meeting at the hall last time this went around about changes to water. It was packed. We can't have a public meeting on Zoom for 400 people or 300 people. You know, we need to help this along and guide this, in my opinion, before it happens, and it'll save us a lot of grief later on. So that's why these parameters are put in place as guiding principles, possibilities, but on paper, so we can refer back to it and says, yeah, that's something that we should probably be considering, that everybody doesn't have to hook up, you know, that we can still expand and make the county happy, because we have this third well with a water tower, storage facility, and the capacity to do that at will. So that will satisfy the county, that will satisfy our need to expand, that will satisfy the ratepayers who don't want to hook up. So that's the wording in this, as good as I could craft it. If we want to defer, I'm fine with that, for everybody to read it and understand it and ask questions. But I think this needs to be done. I don't think this is doing anybody in Shakespeare or us a favor by not including this at this point. So we know what we're looking at when we go ahead, because we're only 2 meetings in, right? So that's a big deal. So that's all I'm going to say. Time to vote.
Well, you're the mover, Andrew, and Daryl is the seconder. So you tell me what you want to do with it. If you want it read and voted upon, I'll do that. If you want something else done, then you need to tell me. That's not my decision.
Is there a desire for council members to have a more depth look? I'm fine with that.
Jeremy?
Yeah, Andrew, like I said, I support most of these ideas in principle. If we had a little bit more information on sort of the breadth of them and what the actual impact would be, I'd be probably very much on board with it. It's the first point. The last point as well. I'm pretty sure that's what happens, is that your capital charges commence at user connection. I'm pretty sure that's what happens every time anyways, but just getting clarification on these items. I think hearing from Wes and having that written from staff and seeing what the impact of these things are would go a long ways to making me feel comfortable with putting them in there. And so I'd be on board with a deferral and looking at them a little bit closer instead of, and you just shook your head, so it makes me believe that what I just said was wrong too. So, I mean, I have a bad understanding of what's happening.
I was here for the sewer expansion, so.
Jerry, do you want to comment?
Well, would we be able to get Mr. Burns's comments on any of these points? Would they be included in the EA study with those options? Would it be a cost recovery option in the study? Again, all the points that are there. I know, instead of dragging it on, I'm hoping, again, as I've said, these are great points, but we should have an EA study first and then dwell into it afterwards.
Mr. Burns, do you have anything you'd like to add?
The first step is, in which is be the principal purpose of the EA study, will be to establish what should be built and what it'll cost. Then how those costs are recovered could be part of the study, but it really doesn't have to be. It would be something that would, to me, it's probably better that it would follow the study. Let the study focus on the technical environmental issues, and then the big issue will always be what it costs and who pays. But to me, that could follow the EA study once we know what should be built. Just again, a thought.
Okay, Hugh?
If it would be all right with Councilor McAlpine and Councilor Hurlick, we don't want to be here all night. How about we just put this off until our next meeting, and then if people got questions, they can ask them, and then everybody can be really clear on where we're at. But I would leave that to Councilor McAlpine and Councilor Hurlick to, if they want to vote now, that's fine. And if they want it next meeting, I'd be fine with that too.
I guess that sounds fair, because I can see even, and Mr. Burns doesn't even have a copy. I apologize. I didn't know who we were going to have here. So yeah, we can defer. If there's a staff report needed, this is a council decision. It's a political decision. I think some discussion, some emails or whatever, not making any decisions is fine with me. It's clearly we don't understand what I'm talking about, and I know it's just new information. It's not the cost of the project, it's a cost of the private well asset that will be taken down and capped off for no use, and it's expensive to do that. So that's the cost that has to be considered. That's one of the items that we need to discuss now rather than later. And it may not happen for 10 years. I don't know, but it needs to be discussed now. So I will be okay. I'm okay with deferral. Daryl?
Daryl, are you okay with deferral?
You know what, I'm all right with a deferral as well. And I totally get we want to get this process going. And I do believe that yes, we could do this initial thing in the environmental. It's when we come to the grant money and doing that work, that's when it's going to get sticky, it's going to get silly, and the questions and the fire's going to fly around this law works. Because to be able to get a grant, I know already it's going to involve my hookup. I can almost guarantee it. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. It's not my position to be putting words in people's mouth. But that's where this is going to go. I will defer as well. And we go from there and we digest this. And I'm suspecting we're going to have to get staff to clear up what Andrew's asking. The second part and make sure it's built in and documented very much. This is the study. When the grant money comes, that's when it's going to get silly, and I'm suspecting you'd be getting in the water if there's not full hookup. But I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for Wes. Should this come back at the next meeting or the second meeting in November?
So to be totally honest, I haven't looked at all the points that Andrew has there. I know that there'll be some financial implications, I'm sure, with some of the things that some of the points that I saw there. So I think it will be a report with Rhonda and myself. So we will try to bring it back for next council meeting, but there is no guarantees.
Okay, so we won't put a date on it. So I'm going to read the entire motion just so that everybody knows what it is. And so the public knows, because we're on Zoom here, and then we'll add the words at the end that it will be deferred. So the Council of the Township of Perth East received a report entitled Process for the Expansion of Shakespeare Drinking Water System dated October 19, 2021, prepared by the Manager of Public Works and Parks for information. And at Council of the Township of Perth East approved the initiation of the Class Environmental Assessment EA process for water quality upgrades to the Shakespeare drinking water system for the 2022 capital budget, and the Council of the Township of Perth East directs staff to include the following minimum principles and options regarding any proposed drinking water expansion in the village of Shakespeare. The first one is cost recovery of full well assessed asset value for residents and businesses and all well owners applies to all wells that would be required to migrate to a municipal water system should a village-wide system be implemented, including but not limited to deferred connections regardless of well age or of other means to achieve full cost recovery for private well owners. Number two, to investigate of expansion of water system that allows existing private well owners to continue to use their well asset as currently operated while still allowing for growth and enhanced fire service, including but not limited to full construction of system with individual choice of connection to system. Number three, construction of third well with treatment storage as proposed, size for growth expansion at a later date, which includes cost recovery principle as in first point. Number 4, ensure system designed to highest standards of water clarity and strive to eliminate chemical residue, taste, or smell. And number 5, water rate and capital charges to commence at user connection. And this item be deferred until a later date. Okay, Jerry?
So this is actually delaying the start of the EA until it comes back. It could be a month. It might not be next meeting in 2 weeks. It could be a month. If this motion stands the way it is. So I can't vote in favor of it. I'd like to see the EA get started right away and then have the mover and seconder's motion be a separate motion, that part be deferred. We need to get the EA started as soon as possible to help coincide with hopefully the approval that we get from the grant. Am I wrong, or are we okay with, is council okay with delaying this another potentially a month?
It could be delayed, and I know Mr. Burns commented that hopefully, things would be going by spring. At the same time, the ISIP grant would be known whether we get it. And yes, if we delay it a month, or it could take longer for staff. This is an awful lot of work for staff to collect. And it could take longer than a month. It could take 2 months. So yeah, we're going to delay the whole process according to this motion.
So this is not, if I may speak, Mayor, I guess this is not, the ICP grant's already in, it's already in the books. This is not, these are guiding principles. They're not to be, I don't believe we discussed having a staff report on this. They're just guiding principles on how we should do the process, almost like a memorandum of understanding, so we know where we want to go. That's the intent. It's nothing to slow anything down, to do not allow a deferral for some second sober thought and discussion at this point is optically not great. So I would say try and get some information back if staff wants to give information. Yeah, that's great. Come back as soon as possible, let council make a decision and vote accordingly.
Going to Jeremy's point, Jeremy was asking for clarification on some of these items. So that's my understanding, that if we defer it, staff was going to come back with clarification. Amanda?
So just weighing in here. So I think, and Councillor McAlpine can correct me. So I think part of the risk, if we don't set some parameters, is that this is a very contentious issue in Councillor McAlpine's ward. And, these streams of our council are public for everyone to see. And I think the concern is that if we don't sort of control the narrative or control the process a little bit more, the people are going to start freaking out when there's no need, because we're in an exploratory phase about next steps. So I think the risk of not setting parameters is that it could cause some issues for Councillor McAlpine in that area. Obviously it doesn't impact me and Ellis, but I recognize if I was in his shoes that could be an issue. On the flip side, on the other side, I also don't know if there is necessarily, to Jerry's point, there is also this opportunity to continue on to move forward with the study. But I think there needs to be at some point some very clear parameters to control the narrative and, make sure we're not creating panic for people. I think that's some of the risk as I see it. And I think we just need to keep that in mind with whatever process we decide to move forward with. That's just sort of my take on it.
So I guess my question is, is the EA delayed then till this resolution comes back? And I would think the answer is yes. Am I incorrect in that? Because it's in the motion. So we're not giving staff permission to start the EA either. We're deferring it, and that's what Jerry's point was. So maybe we should have two motions. We should have one to start the EA process and one for the parameters that Andrew and Daryl wish to get the process going. So procedurally wise, I'm not 100% sure how we do that because we do have this motion and Andrew wanted to defer it. So should we go back? Teresa or Eric, how do we handle this? We go back and do the original motion, and then we have Andrew make another motion that these parameters need to be looked at. Who wants to say what? Teresa?
Okay, I would say that the original motion, whatever's on the table, that one is going to be, you have to, there's a motion on the table right now, as I understand it, right? So you would have to have the, basically the approval from the mover and the seconder, right? In terms of that. So whatever, is how the chair and then the mover and seconder want to handle that as well. If you want to consider that report or the recommendation in the report in a different order, then I would say that that you should have the permission of the mover and seconder on it as well.
So they would withdraw their motion. They would withdraw the motion that they just gave. And then we vote on the recommendation that's in the report. And then Andrew can move the motion that he wants these parameters included. I'm just not sure how we word that one because, so the original motion, we're giving permission for the EA to go forward. Andrew wants these conditions to be part of the EA. Is that correct, Andrew, or what?
Guiding principles of how we're going to approach this endeavor. It's not sure where that falls in the municipal world, but so when we come back to this at a certain point, if and when it ever occurs, that hookup of everybody's or whatever option comes forward after the EAA, then we can refer back to this and go, this is our decision-making guide on how we want to proceed after we get information. But it has to be in there now, or we're not going to be able to do that. So I'm fine with breaking it up. I'm not really in the frame of mind to craft another resolution. We could just, I'm not sure if there's a way to just tag onto that beginning of that.
So are you and so first of all, okay. So are you and Daryl okay with withdrawing your original motion?
I think there's some reasonable arguments made. Yes, we can. I'm fine with withdrawing. Are you okay with that?
Are you okay with that, Daryl?
I'm okay with withdrawing the motion. We start the EA and that we follow up with guiding principles from Councilor Michelle, which include it's clear there, and we have to layer. We have to.
I'm looking at two separate motions. I'm not looking to put it all in one. That's what we have right now. So I'm looking to split it apart. And as the mover and the seconder, I'm asking if you're willing to withdraw the original motion that Andrew put forward.
Yeah, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And we can
yes.
Robert's rules and municipal law allows us to have another separate motion separate from what's here in the same part. That's what I'm concerned. Not that what we're talking about is off cue, but we have a motion on top.
Sit closer to your, I can't hear you, Daryl. Can you sit closer to your?
It's just, I have my concerns that we're stepping out of bounds here with municipal law. That, I'm okay with moving that we escalate where we are, get this going, and we make a motion here beside it. I don't know if we can do that with Andrew's guiding principles, and maybe that needs to come separate. There's guiding principles implemented.
So I go back to my question. Are you willing to withdraw?
Yes,
Motion?
yes, withdraw and then get this moving.
Okay. All right. So then we're going to go back to the original motion with the report. That the Council of Township of Perth East received the report entitled Process for the Expansion of the Shakespeare Drinking Water System dated October 19, 2021, prepared by the Manager of Public Works and Parks for information, and that Council of the Township of Perth East approved the initiation of the Class Environmental Assessment EA process for water quality upgrades to the Shakespeare Drinking Water System for the 2022 capital budget. Okay. And that's moved by Jerry. Second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we will go back. Got my paperwork all messed. Now, sorry, now we'll go back to Andrew. He would like these other items in the motion. And you want them to, you wanted to come back as a motion and then defer it, that staff look at, investigate?
Yes, Mayor Ricketts, I would say striking the word and just put that, just leave it at that. And to defer it for people to have a peruse and ask questions.
Sorry to speak out of turn. I was just going to suggest, even along the lines, if that last line just said in that staff we direct staff to investigate, including the following, that gives direction to staff and includes all of those items in there.
Is that all right, Andrew? Staff investigate the following, and then that will be the items that you brought up.
Not really, but if that looks like it's not going to pass doing it any other way, then let's at least we're going to get it looked at, right?
I just want the opportunity to tweak some of those items if they're not, if they're not what we think they might be, right? I have a few questions that I'll forward on about them to you too, Andrew.
Okay, so help me here. How do you want this worded, Andrew?
I think, Mayor, I guess you could take it just the original motion, the first two paragraphs, and leave it that the Council Township Perth East direct staff to report on the following minimum principles and options regarding and council forward questions as needed.
Okay.
Guiding principles, sorry.
Okay, so the Council of the Township of Perth East directs staff to include the following minimum principles and options regarding any proposed drinking water expansion in the village of Shakespeare. And then the list of those: the cost recovery, the investigation of the expansion, the construction of the third well, the system designed to highest standard, and the water rate and capital charges. Is that correct? Oh, you're muted, Andrew.
Yeah, all the bullet points is fine.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to move that. Daryl, are you still going to second that? Okay. Clear as mud to everybody? Any more comments or questions? We're putting Eric to the test here. His first meeting. Okay. All in favor of that motion? Carried. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Burns, for attending. We appreciate all your knowledge and helping us out tonight. So have a great night. And I'm sure we're going to see you in the future. Okay, moving on. We have no public meetings. We have no public hearings. Reports. We have no planning report, no CA report, no clerk report. Finance, year-to-date budget report. Rhonda, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. We've got our quarterly year-to-date report for the budget. And this is up to October the 8th of 2021. Overall, the year-to-dates are reasonable compared to our benchmarks. There's one note that I want to make to point out to council, and it's in the report, is that the property tax write-offs continue to be an issue with the RT classes going back to farm during the sales. We've tried some mitigation tactics in the office to send notices, what have you. We increased the budget and it's still not pretty. So that's the only one that I would like to point out to council. The rest of it looks like we're fairly on target. If there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay, any questions for Rhonda? Hugh?
I'll try to be quick. Rhonda, on page 202, it shows there's a line for library and then there's a line for library board. Is there a reason that we split that into two?
Yes, there is. The first part is the library contribution from the township. That's our wages for grass cutting and what have you, and then our levy payment to the township, which shows in our books. And then the library board is a separate set of statements and a separate fund that is a separate board statement. So that's why they're separate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Rhonda? Seeing no questions, we have a motion that the council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the treasurer dated October 19, 2021, entitled Year-to-Date Budget Report for Information. Moved by Andrew, second by Daryl. All in favor? Carried. Okay, anything else, Rhonda?
Oh, thank you.
No, well, thank you. Okay, then we're going to move to Public Works, and we have Mornington Communication Land Lease Request. Wes, the floor is yours.
I really don't have anything more to add to the report. If there's any questions?
Okay, any questions for Wes? No questions. Council of the Township of Perth East received a report entitled Mornington Communications Land Lease Request dated October 19, 2021, prepared by the Manager of Public Works and Parks for information, and that council authorized staff to advance with the preparation of a lease agreement with Mornington Communication for the lease of a land parcel at 3976 Galt Street in Shakespeare. Moved by Jeremy, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Anything else, Wes?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, nothing from building, nothing from recreation, nothing from fire. Now correspondence, committee reports. Do we have any committee reports anyone needs to give? Oh, okay. Then we go to bylaws. So we have no first and second reading. We do have one third reading, and it's for the provincial bylaw number 112, 2021, a bylaw to provide for a drainage works known as South Branch of the Northern Municipal Drain 2020 run. And this bylaw be read a third and final time. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we do not have a need for a closed session. Does anyone have any new business they wish to bring up? Any announcements? Okay.
Just a
Yeah.
quick
Jerry.
acknowledgement to Wes and his public works staff. We got the speed radar signs up on Pew Street, so that's going to be interesting. I even witnessed a couple bicyclers driving by, and they were catching them. I didn't realize that sign would get them. They were doing 22 kilometers an hour. Also appreciate that, Wes, on Pew Street. We'll see if that helps. Much appreciated.
Slow down on your jogging, Jerry.
I didn't know they picked up bicycles. Okay, anyone else have anything? If not, bylaw.
Wait, Rhonda.
Sorry, Amanda.
I just saw on social media that Teresa received her 20-year-long service recognition award from the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, and a really nice picture with you and her. So anyways, congratulations.
Yes, I don't know if you were here at the meeting. We did, when we presented the certificate, we presented Teresa with the flowers and.
I think I was, but it's like officially on social media now. So it's like official, right? So we can say congrats again.
Don't answer your phone, Rhonda Fisher.
Yes, thank you. And I didn't know it was there until later today, but thank you.
Okay, that's great. What an accomplishment, Teresa. We're all very proud of you. So anyway, anything else? We do have a bylaw 58/2021, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Township of Perth East at its regular meeting held on October 19, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn at 9:50. Moved by Amanda, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried.